This episode is brought to you by Zarzar Law. I'm investigative journalist Molly Barrows. For years, I've covered the stories that made headlines in Northwest Florida and all along the Gulf Coast. Murders, missing persons, and mysteries of all kinds. These cases are far from over for many victims because the full story has yet to surface. Join me for Gulf Coast Confidential, where I dive into the saltier side of the South and expose the lies, greed, and corruption that often weighs down the truth. It's time to turn the tide and get a shot at justice. Hey, y'all, and welcome to the Gulf Coast Confidential podcast. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Pam and I would just love it. And we would also love to hear from you. Leave a comment or a suggestion about a case, wherever you're listening or if you're watching on YouTube, because there is always a What the Feezy case breaking, brewing, or bubbling up right here in beautiful Northwest Florida and well beyond the Gulf Coast, as we know, Pam.
Perhaps we do.
Well, today's episode is called Judges Behaving Badly, Oklahoma Judge Traci Soderstrom, 500 texts during murder trial, not okay. So this is the first in a series of stories that we're going to do, episodes on judges behaving badly. They have such a direct influence on the outcome of so many cases, even though laws regulate and dictate how evidence is supposed to be presented and heard and weighed. So many times the judges can really set the stage for the right thing happening or something that maybe is falling short of the right thing, depending on who you ask.
Right.
And I think in this situation, it's great to see how they handled this in Oklahoma and holding this woman accountable for what some said was just pretty heinous and egregious behavior with not paying attention to what was happening in this murder trial. So she was caught exchanging hundreds of texts with a bailiff during this murder trial. Traci Soderstrom was caught on court surveillance camera, constantly on her phone. People are like, what is she doing? Why does she keep looking at her phone? Well, turns out, according to authorities, she was scrolling through social media and just saying all kinds of nasty things, commentary about everyone that was there, from the jurors to the witnesses to the prosecutor to the defense attorney, but she and the bailiff were particularly hard on the state prosecutor. So we're going to dive into that in just a second. But first, we want to update you on another story that we've been following. You may remember Dr. David Diffenay. We did an episode on his case recently called Arkansas Dr. David Diffenay, The Naked Truth. And we really mean naked.
We really do.
I know. I wish we didn't really mean it. More so for his poor victims. But the Arkansas Board of Medicine has revoked Dr. Diffenay's medical license for 5 years now. You may remember that the board issued an emergency suspension just a couple of months ago after the board was sent. Well, actually, it was longer than that. It was quite a while back, but they issued an emergency suspension after the board was sent surveillance video of Diffenay casually strolling through his office and performing a sex act in front of and onto staff, along with a complaint that he used pay raises and his position as a doctor to groom patients and employees into sexual acts. He has denied these accusations, saying he's a naturist, but the Arkansas Board of Medicine determined that he violated the Medical Practice Act and presented an ongoing danger to the public, and he's also facing a civil lawsuit. So that was a pretty wild case all the way around. I mean, this guy just seemed like he lived in his own fantasy land, that everything he was doing, you should just accept his excuse, that walking to the office naked and masturbating in front of everyone, including the reception area, was appropriate and acceptable. With the pizza box right there.
Pizza, folks having pizza and stuff. Plus, remember, he couldn't get along with anybody anywhere. He was always thumbing his nose at the HOA where he lives. And
that's right, the cock and balls.
Yeah, he got a big old 6-foot tall metal rooster and then put like some basketballs down it. And he said, now y'all can look at my cock and balls. You know, I mean, just pushing back on everything. So it was interesting because we did that, the Naked Truth episode. Now, I watched 5 hours of him before the Arkansas State Board of Medicine. And let me tell you, it was crazy. He comes in like he's a Burt Reynolds. He's a nice looking guy, you know, but he's strolling around in just a baseball hat cap in his office there, you know, and those people. So
was he bald? No, tease, because I don't think he was bald, but you're kind of like, why would you put a hat on and like nothing else?
Yeah, or put socks on and say I'm cold or whatever, you know, ding ding.
So weird.
Weirdo. Anyway, so we found out more about like who the people were there. He said that that was his living quarters there. The person he did that sex act on had been a patient before, and I think she was an employee there that was separate than his practice, sort of like billing or something like that. And he basically was like, she didn't care. She didn't mind. This is what he's telling doctor.
Of course she cared.
Yeah. Well, so he's sitting there right before the board, and these are all, it was probably scary, but he's jacked back like this, like a 3/4 lean, just sitting there like that. And he tells them, they say, well, where's your lawyer? He's got, my lawyer quit about 7 days ago. And so I'm going to represent myself. So he's up there pro se, and they're telling all the things that he had done. And there were more than what we know. He just, basically they had exhibits, and he just finally said, hey, I just accept it. I accept all of them. And it's kind of crazy to do that.
Well, that's a change of tune from when he first was confronted with some of this.
Oh, yeah.
You remember that he was like, I think this was about this time last year when it first came to light, so to speak, and he was telling the people that were investigating, I don't really remember that. Yeah. You'll have to send me the video, or you'll have to let me, I don't really remember that. I'm like, what, do you just walk around and masturbate on everybody so often? Like, I can't. Could have been yesterday. Could have been last month. I don't really remember any of that.
Yeah, that's how he was. That's how he was doing, just minimizing it. And then he's said that the text from his ex-girlfriend is what triggered the investigation into him. And he may be right. A lot of times when a professional person's doing something wrong, and their wife or girlfriend or their boyfriend or husband knows, when they're mad at you and they divorce you or they're done with you, that is when a complaint goes to the board of whatever,
Absolutely.
in this case, medicine. So, and they were asking him, what kind of conversations are you having? Because they've got tapes and stuff. It is his security tape that's there, and you can't deny it now in front of all these guys. But they said he was talking about hermaphrodites, and I'm like, where are we going?
Why was he talking about hermaphrodites?
I have no idea.
Is he a hermaphrodite?
I don't know. He just, they said that he had, and then he had issues with ketamine. Here we go with ketamine again, writing scripts for ketamine and pain medicine. And he wanted to make sure they got the verbiage right too. I am not naked or whatever. I'm a naturist.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
And it is my religion, and I'm very spiritual in that matter. So this is what he's trying to sell them.
You can be spiritual, and you have to whack off in front of everybody all the time.
That's
not in the reception area, for God's sakes. Not anywhere, really, unless the privacy of your own home or your little rooster out in the front yard, man.
Are you a doctor? Because that's what one of them told him. He said,
I am a doctor.
He said it more street talk, like confronting him, like, stop all this bullshit.
Good for him. Yeah. I'm glad that you watched that. Yeah. That's so interesting.
Oh, yeah. And then he was ADD medicine. And so he's got sex with patients and employees. And he said, I wouldn't walk around naked like that. Remember, that's what he said the first time?
Well, you do. And you did.
Yeah,
there's video of it.
And that's what they were telling him. And then he had some payroll violations. And then he was writing scripts for non-patients. And the people in his office were writing scripts for themselves.
He just does what he wants when he wants to.
Right.
And foster that whole environment.
Right, exactly. And that's probably why they put up with some of the stuff he did, because they were getting their scripts, controlled substances, being able, not all of them, but some of them.
They're like, well, some of these medicine bottles are sticky, but it's all right.
Right. Well, so what they found out with him, they found out through the psychologists and stuff, that he's got an exhibitionist disorder. I think that's pretty obvious.
I've never heard of an exhibitionist disorder, but that certainly seems fitting for him.
It would be him, wouldn't it? Untruthfulness. They were giving him polygraph tests.
Well, I think they call that lying. He's a liar.
Pinocchio Joe. Yeah, where we're from.
Untruthfulness.
he will climb a tree to tell a lie and not stand on the ground and tell the truth. That's that kind of person. And then they said he was defensive and egocentric and unwilling to participate in exploitation. They gave him a chance. He was already being written up and being watched. They gave him a chance to go through a program there. And 2 weeks before it was over, he just decided, I'm leaving.
He's fixed in his mind.
He left.
He's not broken.
Right. And that falls into the stuff they said about him on this. And he said, finally, basically like with a deadpan, I apologize and never happen again. Type of thing.
Like a kid when you catch him doing something. Yeah, I was on the moon with Steve or whatever.
Say sorry.
Making it up.
Yeah, say sorry. That type of thing. All right. Then he told him, please have mercy and grace on me. And then one of the doctors said, did you ask that lady if you could put your genitals on her?
Wow.
And he said no. And he was unbothered, which is no surprise either. And then, so then they basically said, all these other things that are going on, we're not going to address. We are addressing this inappropriate behavior you have here. So they revoked his license. So
for 5 years, that's interesting, not permanently.
Right, not permanently. Revoke usually means permanently, but this is with a path back where he maybe can get some help. And see, in all these cases of these things that we do a lot of times, it's somebody that has a lot of authority and we respect them and they misuse that authority because you have a responsibility to not do that to people that are in a subordinate position. But right after this, then they had another doctor come in and he came sauntering in. His name was Dr. Summerhill. And he came in there and he had some issues where he got drunk and he'd fight things. And then he was on a program too. And then they said, well, why you keep doing this? Because he came in, he said, he came right in and said, I agree to everything. There ain't nothing to talk about. Let's just do it. My lawyer over here said I ain't got a leg to stand on, a lawyer that he had talked to. And so they said, no, sit down. Let's talk for a minute. Because he was a good person. And he said, when my life turned around upside down and I made even worse decisions, he said, my wife, this is hard. My wife attempted suicide and she's paralyzed from the jaw down. So it made me drink more. He said, I'm not blaming her or anything. But he said, when I drink, I show my ass and I get out and I fight. And he said, I'm over that now. I think I got to quit that. But he just talked a lot. And I thought if he would just stop, they probably will suspend his or either let him keep practicing with the way back. So he was another one overprescribing, extremely overprescribing, because he's just one of those nice guy, country type doctors. So they told him, you're going to have to tighten the MMEs up, the morphine equivalents and stuff. And he said, okay. He even on his own went to be with a doctor that's a known hard ass. And he told him, you are doing everything wrong. Tighten up, and maybe you can get your license back.
Well, good for him, but he took responsibility is what it sounds like.
Oh, yeah.
And Diffenay, you're wondering, it sounds like he was just sort of going through the motions, but hopefully not. Hopefully he will take responsibility and grow from this.
Right. He was propped up, like I said, like a Burt Reynolds. He thinks he's as cute as Burt Reynolds or something.
No way is he as cute as Burt Reynolds.
No, Burt Reynolds, but he was propped up like that. But this last doctor here, he was so sweet. He said, I will do anything you say. And they said, well, we'll maybe take your DEA license. He said, please don't do that. Because if you take my DEA license, how can I practice? I live in an area where people have a lot of pain. And so they said, well, okay. So they let him keep practicing, provided he meets all the parameters. So there is a way back when people mess up.
And it sounds like that's a fair board, or they're attempting to be to the best of their ability.
They were, and they asked the questions they needed to, and even told each other, I'm leaning for revocation. Perhaps I can be talked into a path back if someone chooses to do so.
Well, we all need some grace and mercy in our life when we're willing to learn from our mistakes. And I think that's the tough part with a lot of these, whether it's these boards that are evaluating these doctors or if it's a judge, like we're going to be talking about here in a minute. You weigh that and you have to obey within the legal bounds of your authority. But when people do have a chance to improve, you don't want to see somebody's life derailed forever if they can have a path back.
Right. And he told them, if I ever get brought back in here again, I will give you my license. And I was like, wow, he's serious.
That was the second doctor.
Yeah, he was so likable and sweet and everything. And I'm glad they did that. It was such a contrast in that. So that was 7 hours of watching board meetings.
Wow, that's a lot, but you learn a lot.
I did learn a lot. And it gives me, some boards are not that good. Some boards are not.
Well, you watched the Santa Rosa School Board meeting when we were following up on the McChesney case.
Yeah, and I was upset about that. But they all had authority and responsibility to them. The first responsibility of a medical board or any kind of board with medicine is to protect the public.
Absolutely, as it should be. And yes, I'm looking forward to that. Well, we'll see if Dr. Diffenay stays on the straight and narrow.
I hope he does.
Well, back to Judge Traci Soderstrom. And she's the Oklahoma judge that was caught sending hundreds of texts and scrolling through social media during a murder trial last year. She acknowledged her quote-unquote inappropriate behavior, and then she resigned, but she kind of went kicking and screaming, in my opinion, as we dove into this. She resigned on Friday, just a few days ago. That was 3 days before she'd been scheduled to go to trial in a special court. So there's no denying it. They have copies of her text. They also have video of her from the courtroom where she's going through there. Let me tell you a little bit about this trial. The defendant, Christian Tyler Martzall, was on trial over the 2018 killing of his girlfriend's 2-year-old son. Security video published by the Oklahoman showed that Soderstrom was texting or messaging for minutes at a time during jury selection, opening statements, even testimony during the trial, which was in Chandler. That's about 45 miles northeast of Oklahoma City, and ended up being investigated by the Oklahoma Supreme Court. They determined that Soderstrom texted more than 500 times with this same bailiff during this trial, in which she, quote, mocked the physical appearance of attorneys, jurors, and witnesses, and used offensive language to deride the state's attorneys. And this is all according to a petition that was filed in October of 23 by the Oklahoma Supreme Court Chief Justice M. John Kane IV. So I'll give you a little idea of what some of these texts said before we start discussing this. In his petition, Kane said that Soderstrom and her bailiff, quote, called murder trial witnesses liars, admired the look of a police officer who was testifying, disparaged the local defense bar, expressed bias in favor of the defendant, and displayed gross partiality against the state. Some of those texts included, let's see here, the then judge referring to a district attorney was, quote unquote, sweating through his coat. She described the defense attorney as, quote unquote, awesome, and called a prosecutor's witness a liar. This is all according to the petition. And anyhow, you can see why the court was upset about it, and thankfully they were, but she was not. She was very defensive and defiant.
Oh, yeah.
You know, basically saying, okay, you got me with all the texting, but I could totally be impartial.
Yeah. When she said, yes, what I text that was inappropriate, but it doesn't matter, like that. Excuse me. And she said that, and so you knew. And it wasn't just like the prosecutor sweating through his coat. She was also saying stuff about his genitalia. And then she said he had baby hands.
Unbelievable.
You know, and that he was stupid and boring and, you know, and then basically for the defense attorney, she's like, can I clap for her? You know, she's smart. Basically like they're not. And like either a witness or a juror, she's like, do they have teeth? And then another one like, do they have hair? You know, these are
hateful.
Yeah. I mean,
insulting.
You're a judge, but you're judging people. You should be fair. You should be the wisest people in the world, basically. We got you judging things. Like you said, this is the murder trial of a 2-year-old baby. And she's not paying attention, you know, sitting up there. She's only 50 years old. She's only been in this judgeship for about a year or something. And this is what she...
Yeah, she was elected in 2022.
Right. And her bailiff, that's, it always baffles me when, if one person does wrong, I kind of get that. Wrong people do wrong people stuff, you know. But 2 people or even 3... You know, the bailiff had to know that that's not right. I guess they're friends or something, but I mean, I guess it's like iron sharpens iron. But 2 people doing this back and forth, that means the bailiff's not doing her job either. We've seen people in courtrooms that jump from flat-footed over the desk to get the judge or something, and you're over there texting and kikiing with the judge.
Sounds to me like they'd probably been going on in other situations and that it just got to extremes because they felt so comfortable doing it. Yet to your point, there was something that I read about how she had sent a laughing emoji icon to the bailiff after this person had made a, quote, crass and demeaning reference to the prosecuting attorney's genitals. And this was in that order from the Supreme Court as well.
Yeah.
I tell you what, though, that's insane to me. Because this guy was eventually convicted of second-degree manslaughter in the 2008 teen death of this little baby. It was the son of his girlfriend at the time. And I think that was the girlfriend and the mother of the child. Her name was Judith Thanker, and she pleaded guilty to enabling child abuse. She was sentenced to 25 years, and she was a key prosecution witness, according to, you know, media in that area. But that was who Soderstrom called a liar during testimony and basically said, quote, state just couldn't accept that a mom could kill their kids, so they went after the next person available, end quote. That does not sound unbiased to me. It sounds like she just thinks she's hot shit on a stick. Pardon my French.
Well, and while that word's out there, they were saying basically the judge and the bailiff were shooting the, you know. So in her looking at that mom, you know, I don't know the whole ins and outs of that case, but she pled, got 25 years. This ding-ding over here, taking his chances in court, he got 2 years for manslaughter. It ends up being time served, and the judge is up there already made up her mind. I'm for the defense. I mean, she shouldn't even be a lawyer. She shouldn't even get to be a lawyer. That is not just prejudiced or biased. That is oppressive.
Unbelievable. So the mother, who didn't actually even kill the child, but did plead to enabling, gets 25 years. And the person who actually killed this baby gets just 2 years for manslaughter.
Right. And he could piece out of there because it was time served. So all that type of thing with her going back and forth, scream, liar, 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 and the bailiff's like, clap, clap, clap. You know, that's some effed up stuff. But it happens. There are so many judges that when I go in their courtroom sometime, I'm like, I can't believe, you're the judge, and I can't believe we're in this circus here. You know, take control. And I don't know that you just, judgeships and stuff, sometimes they're younger judges, sometimes they're older, and we need a mix because of the wisdom or lack thereof or whatever. But I think being smart and wise are two separate things.
I agree. And then just having the ability to listen and pay attention and take your job seriously. That just shows such a lack of respect for what you're there to do.
Right. Well, it was a camera right behind her here, and they could see down, and she had it in her lap and was texting. I mean, you can see it. Maybe if they could zoom in, you could even see it there.
Yes, we've got some pictures for those who are watching. Yeah, that screenshots basically of the security camera, the video. But it was directly over her, and then there were other angles as well. But you could see throughout the whole thing that she's barely paying any attention. It's like she's just cashing in a paycheck and using it as her own personal entertainment.
Yeah, or she's bored. Well, somebody tipped off the prosecutor, and he filed a complaint against her. And I think she was just so mad about that she was kind of also known, and it's scary that nobody's checking up on these folks. But like I said, the Supreme Court, basically, the judge tells everybody when we go into court, turn your phones off. I don't want to hear them. I don't want you on them, this kind of thing. And you're going to sit up there. How do you think folks feel out there looking, going, maybe she's playing Parcheesi or something down here. You are not paying attention.
Right. And we need you to pay attention. That's what you're here to do. Exactly. Yes. And I do want to share some of her quotes and how she was basically trying to defend what she had done. But before we get to that, we just want to thank you so much for watching and being a supporter of Gulf Coast Confidential. And a special shout out to Zarzar Law. We sure appreciate their support here for Gulf Coast Confidential. I don't know if you ever should need a personal injury attorney, but if you do, he is our favorite.
He is.
He is the, what has he said? His tagline is, careless drivers hate Joe Zarzar.
Yeah, I love Joe Zarzar.
I know. We love Joe Zarzar too. And we follow a lot of his cases here on Gulf Coast Confidential. We talk a lot about Dr. Shiknowski. He is currently undergoing depositions in that case. Mr. Bill Bryan leaves behind a widow from Muscle Shoals, Alabama, after he died on the operating table. And Dr. Shiknowski is accused of accidentally removing his liver instead of his spleen. He's also representing any number of people who were injured through no fault of their own, a victim of an alleged DUI driver. There's so many cases. So anyway, we appreciate Joe Zarzar. And if you don't get a chance to, hopefully you will never have to need a personal injury attorney. But if you do, if you are injured through no fault of your own, you want someone who knows the law, who's conversational, who can break it down for you, what you need, what they can do for you, and also will fight for you, whether it's up against, in court, up against somebody that's a trial attorney, or if it's an insurance company. You need somebody who knows the law and is willing to fight for you. And that is certainly Joe Zarzar.
Definitely. And if you're a courtie, go watch him in court sometimes, because I've learned a lot just watching.
Yeah, absolutely. And he certainly can weigh in on judges and just all the things that he's seen as well. And, he records a lot now because it is public record, essentially. A lot. You need permission from the court to take cameras in and recording devices as a member of the media. But he's doing that more and more. So if you follow him on Zarzar Law and his social media, you will see that he shares a lot of what he's doing in these trials with the public. And you can learn a lot about that as well, which I think goes to show his passion for what he's doing.
Oh, he believes in what he's doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, going back to this is a judge that is an example of somebody who is apparently not passionate about the law or following it. I thought it was interesting. So this is one of the quotes that I used from her when she was basically being questioned by the authorities for what she had done by the Supreme Court. She goes, quote, "There were some things that I did inappropriately. talking about this is during a press conference, she goes, it doesn't matter whether it was a traffic case or whether it was a divorce case or whether it was a first degree murder case. I texted during that trial and that was inappropriate. So basically what she's trying to say is it doesn't matter the nature of the case. Let me minimize this, Oh, okay. Right. Well, if that were my baby who'd been killed by my boyfriend and I'm looking at 25 years in prison, I damn sure hope you're paying attention. I damn sure hope you're not sitting there texting the bailiff all these insults about all the people that are involved in my baby's death. I hope you care enough about yourself and respect the process enough that you're going to listen and try to help me find out what is justice for my child that's gone.
Right. And I don't know why the Bar Association doesn't look into her as an attorney. Because she's not just going to, that's her personality. That's her essence. That's what she does.
Arrogant.
Yeah. So, and then to get on there and double down instead of like have a mea culpa or fall on your sword or whatever, she's just like that. That's how she's going to be. Even one of the other things that she's very sexist, she would have the men attorneys pose in these hot pink chairs and have their photos taken, and their pictures would be out in the outer office of hers there. You never saw any females in these. So I think when all this hubbub started, I think she realized, I'm fixing to get in trouble for this, that, and the other. So I think it might have been her bailiff or one of her employees or something took some pictures of some lady lawyers that day and put them up, so she knew that when we are doing wrong, when we got these personality traits or just these habits or whatever it is that we're doing, if you want to get better, get better. If you don't, the rest of us need to stay the hell away from you.
Well, and it sounds like, to me, that's the kind of behavior of somebody who thinks they're owed something. Yeah. I get to, I'm in a position of power now. I'm going to put all y'all in your place. Yeah. I'm going to do what I want to do, and you're going to like it. Right. But to your point, she knew exactly that it was wrong and people weren't going to like it because otherwise she wouldn't have mixed it up.
Right. She circled back around. Well, and also with this, can you imagine if she didn't get scolded or caught or reprimanded or fired, or the reason she did that 3 days before she was going to go have her hearing and stuff, she wanted her retirement. And she did get it. And so whatever, I don't know if I agree with all that, but doing this, with these other attorneys, I would look back on every case she did with the eye and go, you've messed up every case because you are not unbiased.
Any decent defense attorney is going to do exactly that, especially if there is an appeal. I agree with you. Well, and that's essentially what the court said, that her pattern of conduct demonstrated, quote, gross neglect of duty, gross partiality and oppression, as well as a lack of temperament to serve as a judge. So hats off to Judge Kane of the Supreme Court. But, and here's another one from her, though, as she pushed back against how those texts were characterized. She said, the content and the insinuation and the volume and the length of those things I am not agreeing to because it doesn't matter. She disputed that there was basically any bias.
Right. Well, she said it. She said it right. It doesn't matter. Nobody matters but her. The 2-year-old doesn't matter. The mom that got 25 years, the man that just got 2, doesn't matter. When they took that camera down and then got it put back up, she had a black box put across there so people couldn't see what she's doing in her lap. And they said, no, ma'am, that black box comes off. We need to see, especially you. So she's right. It doesn't matter in her opinion. So you should not be a judge. Peace out of here and go away.
Yeah, she said it probably could have waited.
Yeah.
I mean, I would just be mortified and embarrassed. Like, you're right. I'm sorry. I let this get the better of me. We were getting too carried away. I felt too relaxed, too casual, whatever. I can tell you in news, we all have pretty dark senses of humor. I think law enforcement can relate to that. Certainly attorneys can as well. When you see terrible things that people do to each other all the time, it's not that you become desensitized to it, but it's also a way of just processing it and dealing with it. So I can promise you there are plenty of jokes that I would not want anyone to hear. And it's not because I don't care about these people or what happened to them. But there's just things that are like, wow, I got to you have to have a little pressure valve, What's normal to some folks is not normal to others. So at any rate, I'm trying to give her the benefit of the doubt, but just by her attitude and the way she handled it, when confronted, she doesn't care. She feels like she should just be able to do whatever she wants, which I think is another good reason why we should do this series of judges behaving badly. Because like you said earlier, when you are in a position of authority, when you are in a position of power, to whom much is given, much is expected.
Exactly. Exactly. And I just... be gone, girl.
basically, at the end of the day, like to your point, she hasn't been a judge for very long, and frankly, I'm glad. I'm glad she's resigned. I'm glad she's not going to be on the bench anymore. People deserve to have their cases taken seriously. They deserve to have it treated fairly. You know, we were just talking with our director James a little while ago, and he was saying, you know, if you were a trucker, you expect a trucker to be sober, to be paying attention, not to be on their phone texting. Essentially, it's the same thing. You know, she's driving this bus figuratively.
Right.
She's watching all of this, and it's supposed to be her job to make sure everybody's following the law and that this trial is fair and that there's justice for this tiny victim.
Right.
And she failed in her duties and just wanted to make excuses for it. So I applaud the Oklahoma Supreme Court for stepping up and holding her account for that unprofessional behavior. She'd only been, I think she was elected in 22 and had only been on the bench in 23. She'd only been serving like 6 months before that particular murder trial. So I'm glad if you're going to show your butt, better to do it sooner rather than later and
do it early.
Minimize the damage, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, just to say this too, there are way, 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 way more better judges than bad ones. But we are going to do a series on the ones that are behaving badly.
Absolutely. We're looking forward to that. Well, Pam, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And we thank you for joining us, and to our listeners and those watching on the Gulf Coast Confidential YouTube channel. That is it for Judges Behaving Badly. Oklahoma Judge Traci Soderstrom, 500 texts during murder trial, not okay. I'm your host, writer, and producer, Molly Barrows, with co-host and researcher Pam Hill. And a big thanks, as always, to our director, editor, and production engineer, James Roy. Remember, you can check out more episodes wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. You can watch, of course, on the YouTube channel. Just don't forget to like and subscribe, y'all, and we'll see you next time. This episode is brought to you by Zarzar Law.